first step in the mourning procedure is traditionally the rending of garments, because in the old days, that's how people used to mourn. They would tear their clothes. And in the old days, this was a really big deal because our ancestors basically owned two outfits their whole lives. The one they'd wear every day, and the one they'd wear when the one they wore every day wore out. So the tearing of clothes is a big deal. We take that on symbolically by either putting a little rip in our clothes or by tearing our ribbon. And we do that first by saying a bracha and then by ripping. So if you can repeat after me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam dayan ha'emet. If you've got a ribbon or if you've got something you can tear, now is the moment. I'm just going to give a thing. At this point, we process with the coffin. We do so intentionally. We don't run. I'm going to say a prayer as we move forward. DJ is going to organize logistics.
Ladies and gentlemen, the people who are going to be pallbearers are going to come right to the hearse. Sydney, you and your father are going to be furthest away from the hearse. The other people are going to come next to you.
Right behind you. I'm in the big box.
Ladies and gentlemen, you'll get a follow rabbi.
Okay. Nice and strong.
Step off the way you came. Have you join back here for a moment? Those who live together can sit together. Those who don't. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have you step in. The chairs are spaced apart, so please sit and be comfortable. You can stand, whatever you do, whatever would you feel comfortable. Just to lower it. Again, ladies and gentlemen, it's very traditional to lower the casket upon the immediacy of coming to the grave, which Rabbi will start now. After the casket has been placed in the grave, we'll then begin our actual formal ceremony. Rabbi, when you're ready, that lever right there.
Ad mikavat avo v'shalom. May Michelle Cohn go on to God in peace. Shil malod Sinai al ha'arim. May ayin yavo Ezri may Adonai ose shemayim b'aretz. Al yitin l'moraglecha al yanum shemrecha. Hinei lo yanum v'lo yishan shomer Yisrael. Adonai shemrecha naitucha yad yaminecha. Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka v'yarech b'layla. Adonai yishmarcha mikol ra. Yishmor nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzeitcha. Uboecha me'ata v'yad olam. What a precious find is a woman of valor. Her worth is far beyond the beast. Her family puts confidence in her and lacks no good thing. She is good to them all the days of her life. She opens her hand to the needy and extends her hand to the poor. She is clothed with strength and splendor. She looks to the future cheerfully. She opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. Her family comes forward and bless her. Many women have done superbly, they say, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty vain. But a woman who honors God is much to be praised. Extol her for the fruit of her hands. Wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. Friends, we're here to say farewell to the physical remains of Michelle Cohn. Traditionally, a Jewish funeral is a short affair, even without a pandemic being upon us. Today, we have two major responsibilities: eulogies and interment. Our job is to speak about Michelle prayers around those two activities. Even without COVID-19, I knew that this day Michelle was a very important part of our community. So many of us were touched by her gentle demeanor, her grace, her generous spirit. Michelle, one of my older male relatives would have said, Michelle was a classy lady. I remember when I first met Michelle, it was just after she chanted the blessing for the new month. I was very moved. I looked forward to hearing her sing it every Rosh Chodesh. I will miss her presence very greatly. We are all diminished by her physical absence. I knew for a while that this day would be hard even without a pandemic. We all want to reach out and hug Dave and Sydney. We want to hug each other. But we can't. We are, however, blessed with the second best thing. We are blessed with a technology that allows us to hold each other virtually, to hold Dave and Sid virtually, and to honor Michelle's memory. And at the same time, keeping us all safe. From the wisdom of Solomon. A good person, though taken from us too soon, will rest in peace, for honor in old age does not come from length of life. Honor in old age does not come from length of years. Understanding is the gray hair of humanity. A blameless life is ripeness of age. Perfection in limited years is like living for many years. So a good person, though taken from us too soon, will rest in peace. Let us then, with peace of mind, let that good soul rest. It's now traditional for some words from those closest to Michelle. I didn't get who would want to go first, but please. There is a stick right here.
I would like to stand on the stick, I guess.
Whatever you would like, we will adjust for you.
Okay. Hi. When I was a child, my mom read to me every night. The Wizard of Oz, Boxcar Children, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Little Bear, Betsy Tacy, Harry Potter. One of the books she read during my younger years was Love You Forever by Robert Munch. It is a story about a mother who has a son who grows from a sweet baby to a mischievous toddler to a moody preteen, to a wild teenager, to a serious adult and father. And through it all, she comes into his bedroom at night, cradles him in her arms, and sings, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." And like the boy in the story, I too am growing up, although hopefully my progression has been a little more graceful. And as an adult, I'm starting to realize that there were some things my mother told me as a child that were not wholly true. As it turns out, Tums are not adult vitamins, but telling me they were did discourage me from trying to eat them like candy. And the servers at the restaurant did not necessarily think it polite or not if I left food on my plate, but my mom certainly cared that I decided I was finished eating so we could leave. I thought I had figured out all the truths behind the half-truths by now, so I was surprised a couple weeks ago when I arrived home and pulled Love You Forever off the shelf to find no sheet music on the last page. As a toddler, I was very distressed that we might never know the true melody of the lullaby in the book, but she assured me that the author included a page of sheet music in the back of the book, and that fixed all my worries. I think that was my mom in a nutshell. She always had a solution in her brain for any problem. She was a quick thinker and problem solver for me, for her students, and for anyone who was lucky enough to have her in their life. My mom guided me through all of my hardest times, through unplaceable anxious feelings, fights with friends, breakups, crumbling pie crust-induced meltdowns, the loss of loved ones, Baltimore bed bugs. What's this weird spot I found on my arm? Even when I did not think I wanted her help, she was always right. Mom was the one who saw my passion for theater and pushed me to embrace it in all of its forms. When I was not cast in any plays, during my freshman year of high school, she forced me to join stage crew, where I discovered an even deeper passion for being backstage than on stage. Without her stern guidance, I would not be doing and loving the work I do now. She was right about everything. My mom was a teacher at school and at home. She taught me how to play guitar and how to strum the chords as I sang. She taught me how to dance in the kitchen while she hummed the tune. She taught me everything she knew about cooking and baking and pies. She sat with me through homework and school projects, frustrated nights with tears in my eyes. It was with her influence in mind that I taught in the resource room at the Hebrew School and tutored bar and bat mitzvah students. She taught me how to love the people in my life and the things that I do. She signed me up for swim lessons, ballet lessons, piano, gymnastics, taekwondo, acting, and she taught me to stick with my commitments. Even if what I was doing was not exactly what I thought it would be, I still had to see it through to the end. My mom was my best friend. She was the first person I went to with a problem, and the first person with whom I would share my accomplishments. We could spend hours sitting and talking with each other. One of my favorite weeks of the year was when my dad would spend a few nights at a tree convention and my mom would let me sleep in their bed with her. It was the best slumber party of the year, and in the morning she would wake me for school with music on the radio. There were other special Mommy Sydney times as well over the years. When I was in 8th grade, she decided I needed to visit Disneyland before I was too old to enjoy it. We flew to California, just the two of us, and I got an elite tour of Michelle's California. We stayed with her best friend and soul sister, Barb Zola, during the first half of the week, and Mom took me around Claremont and LA County. I saw her childhood home, her elementary school, and folk music center, where my mom was introduced to the folk music scene, and where she bought me a light blue ukulele that I fell in love with. In the second half of the week, we joined my grandma at a hotel in Anaheim and had an early celebration of our 3 May birthdays at Disneyland and California Adventure. On our way home, we missed our connecting flight in Dallas and got stuck in the airport for 12 hours, where we broke out the ukulele, made up songs about the things we could see around us, and slept on uncomfortable cots. Or I slept, and Mom stayed up all night to keep an eye on me. There have been other trips over the years, and they have all been made more special by my mom's love, presence, and skilled itinerary planning. end of Love You Forever. The boy's mother calls to tell him that he needs to see her because she's very old and sick. She starts to sing her lullaby but cannot finish it. The boy rushes over to her house, cradles her in her arms, and sings, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my mommy you'll be."
Michelle was a very modest and gifted woman with near endless patience. Most importantly, she shared her gifts with the community. Michelle was a mother, a teacher, a pie baker, a chorale singer in 3 states, a teenage Serbo-Croatian folk dancer, a self-taught musician, a volunteer, a wife and partner, and she could yodel. That is an abbreviated list. Here are a few details. She was born in Los Angeles County, California, a teenager of the 70s, with interests in folk dancing and Joni Mitchell. She frequented the Folk Music Center, a famous location and musicians' hangout in Claremont, her hometown. She was there again more recently and bought our daughter, Sydney, the ukulele she just spoke of. After high school, Michelle backpacked Yosemite for a week. They tied their food from ropes strung between trees and still lost most of it to bears. She received a bachelor's degree from Pitzer College and landed in New York City, where she received a master's degree in early childhood education from Columbia. Michelle taught and later administrated at the New York Foundling Hospital's John A. Coleman School. She taught special needs children who were generally 2 to 6 years old. She had a calling for this age group. She found the chorale, singing, and folk dance communities in New York. And I hope you can hear me on Zoom with the wind. I can tell you the very first time I saw Michelle, I remember her exact location and what she was wearing. I was on a balcony, an indoor balcony, looking down at an entire dance floor. I saw her. I quickly headed down the stairs and we shared our first dance. We saw each other for 51 of the next 52 weeks. One Saturday evening, in that same stairwell, between the balcony and the dance floor, I stole another kiss. I asked her to marry me. I had the catch of a lifetime. We moved to Flemington. Michelle commuted to New York for 3 years until the commute exhausted her. She then substitute taught at the Matheny School and more locally at the Flemington Raritan School District, where they recognized her talents and they wanted her too. They offered her a position and an opportunity to develop and improve their program. Michelle and her teaching partner, Patty Force, combined 2 classrooms of special need children in one large room. Team teaching, they called it. They taught mostly 5 to 8-year-olds with special needs. There was a synergy in this room. It was almost magic, as her fellow teachers and co-workers will testify. This was a classroom you may have never seen or imagined. Each teacher should have had 4 or 5 children. Some years, it was nearly double and overcrowded. Some students were profoundly disabled. Some needed Michelle's class for only a year or 2. This population of students required teaching assistants and some years healthcare aides, so that teaching could continue uninterrupted. Michelle trained assistants and aides simultaneously with the classes. A well-trained staff could often correct a situation before there was a problem, and the teaching of students continued uninterrupted. That was the priority. When Michelle gave birth to Sydney, I thought she would take a hiatus for a few years or more. She replied she did not want to possibly lose her wonderful staff she had collected and trained. She returned to school in September, ever the dynamo. She researched and developed new teaching techniques, methods, and tools best suited for individual students or groups of students. She brought home and built electric switch boxes with yes and no buttons for nonverbal students to choose the correct button and answer the questions before she had computers in the classroom. The kids left school at 4, sometimes Michelle left at 7. She taught reading, writing, arithmetic, how to pull up your pants, telling time, calendar, toileting, how to blow your nose, how to put on your coat, feeding, hand washing, American Sign Language, and whatever was most likely to be important for that particular child. There were also some children who took their first steps in her classroom. Some parents said their child would never respond or communicate, much less talk. They were astonished when they saw what their child could accomplish. Some of these students moved to the mainstream or regular education classrooms. Some now operate cash registers at ShopRite and give us the correct change. Some went to college. Some work in restaurants. Some never left home. But they know how to wash their hands. They all got a jump start from Michelle. Sydney, our daughter, is Michelle's most cherished accomplishment by far. She and Sydney look alike, and for years, their voices were indistinguishable. Sydney is also a pie baker. She learned from the best. I once saw Sydney put herself in timeout. She told me that she had been a little crabby to Mommy. Again, she learned from the best. Michelle was a sensational cook. She would often add one new recipe to the weekly menu she posted on the refrigerator. We still use her handwritten childhood cookbook. And we had her grandmother's biscuits recently. We took a family vacation to the Adirondacks for 20 years. This meant more folk songs, more guitars, more pies, and more pies. Michelle had a beautiful singing voice. I hope you were fortunate enough to have heard her sing a solo. She found time to volunteer. She lived her life with patience and modesty and high standards, as I mentioned earlier. A friend of mine from college corresponded with Michelle earlier this month. The note includes this: when I heard you singing and playing the guitar up in the Adirondacks, I was transported by your voice. I have admired your talent to express yourself with music and your gift to articulate your views so thoughtfully. You are an inspiration, and to know you is to love you. I am hugging you from afar. Forever, your friend, Linda. Michelle was truly an inspiration. Thank you.
At this point in the service, it's traditional to chant the El Malay Rachamim. It's the ancient prayer we say for the departed. And David, you can remind me Michelle's Hebrew name. El Malay Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Amtzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina B'malot Kedoshim Utorim Kizoa Harakim Mazirim Et Nishmat Chana Bat Avram V'Sara Shalcha Lolama B'Gan Eden Tehei Menuchata Ana Bal Harachamim Hastireha B'Seiter Knafecha Lolamim Utzror B'Tzror Chayim Et Nishmata Adonai Unachlata V'Tanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkava V'Nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Michelle Cohn, who has gone to her eternal rest. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace, and let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Folks, This is perhaps the most challenging part of our ritual today. It's called emet v'chesed, the last righteous act you can do for someone whom you've loved. And in our tradition, that is putting them back in the earth from which they physically came. Michelle's soul has begun the trip to heaven. Her body needs to be taken back to the earth from which it comes. So,
Thank you, Rabbi. In a few moments, we'll explain how we are going to make everybody safe as we place the earth. But I just have to point out, Dave, the first time I met you, do you remember when it was?
not sure.
It was back almost 20 years ago. It was at this very cemetery. And I knew who you were by the end of our meeting. And then I realized whoever was in your life must be pretty special too. And then obviously I met Michelle 2 weeks later. But what happened was, we had a funeral. Everybody had departed. Dave took off his jacket, threw it over the chair, and said, "You'll learn, Deej, I stay for everyone, and I fill in the grave." And so, he honored that person by filling the grave completely. And then, for the next almost 20 years, every time we have a burial here, I can always count on Dave to be a part, to make sure that person and the traditions that have been followed for centuries are completed. So it's only right that you come forward first for your beloved wife and place Eretz Israel, Earth from Israel, on top of her casket. And we'll ask your daughter to come forward to do the same. And yes, I sanitized the bag, obviously, so my hands are clean.
And I'm going to just make a request for everyone else who partakes in this, and that I personally I like it when this is done very gently, as we fill in the grave. I don't like to hear big clunks of earth hitting wood, and I just would like to make a request that we do this as gently and carefully as possible, so that it feels nice and sweet, and that's it.
And I'll add to that if the soil gets placed in the corners first, it'll softly tumble down and it'll be a quieter event. It's gonna be a little different.
So
Thank you.
after they've placed the earth, we're going to form two lines. It's tradition and customary to take the shovel and use the back end of the shovel first to show that it's not an ordinary use of that particular tool. And then place several shovelfuls of earth. And then after everybody goes, we'll continue until at least the casket itself is covered. We do need to fill in, as Dave so eloquently said, on the sides, and it will tumble down. After the casket has been covered, we'll do our concluding rituals, and then we'll form our two lines for the mourners to walk through. And then whoever would like to stay with us to fill in the grave completely at the very end after the ceremony is concluded, you're certainly welcome to stay with us to partake in that. Have you come forward first? be the time to do so, please. Placing this shovel for all of you who are watching and with us in spirit.
לא תעזוב נפשי לשאול, לא תיתן חסדך ולא שחת. תודיעני אורח חיים, טובה שמחות את פניך. נימות פניך נצח. מכתם לדעתי, שומרני אל כי חסית בך, אמרת לאדוני, אדוני אתה, טובתי בעלליך. לקדושים אשר בארץ המה, בדירי כוכב צבאות. מידם ובלסת שנותיו, על שפתי, אדוני בנצל בחופי, אתה תמיך גורלי. חבלים נפלו לי בנימים, אבנה לחת שופרה עלי. אברך את אדוני אשר יצאני, אף לילות יסרוני כליותיי. שיביתי אדוני לנגדי תמיד, כי מימיני בא למות. לכן צמח ליבי ויגל קולי, אף בשרי ישכון לבטח. לא תעזוב נפשי לשאול, לא תיתן חסדך לראש שחת. תודיעני אורח חיים, טוב השמחות את פניך. נימותי ממך נצח.
go in on the vault, not on the lid, not on the side.
I'm going to take a look off this way.
Mechtam ledavi. Rainiel Kasisabach. Amar Adonai Adonai Ata. Nobody fall alecha. Lektoshim Hashem Barekecha. Vatirei Ochem Libo. Adonai menatel ki bechosi, ata tovich gorali. Avolim napuli badiimim am nachalat shomra alai. Avorech et Adonai asher yatzani, apelot yitzruni tel yodai. Viviti achad lenegdi kami, mimini balebo. Lachein tzamachti bibi agel kodi, apetari yeshkol laveta. Lo tazok nafshi lishol, lo kitei chassidcha lerot shachad. Oh, tien yorachayim, no basmachot et ponecha.
Everybody, I think we're going to stop here.
Neimon mimincha netza.
I'm going to ask everybody to take a step back. Thank you. I'm going to ask everybody to kind of gather back in for our concluding prayers, and again at the end, well, whoever would like to stay to completely fill, you're welcome to. Who doesn't know the cottage?
I'm going to use the cottage part, so everybody should use the cottage. I got one. Lorner's Cottage. Yitz Gadol. ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועלמא דברה פירוטי, וימליך מלכותי, בחייכו וביומכו, ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלו ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם עמי עמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שני דקודשא בריחי לעילה בין כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיים וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו amen. Folks, thank you. You did emes v'chesed. You did the final righteous act that friends and loved ones do for their loved one who passed away. It's a very great mitzvah. At this point, the last ritual is called shurot. Shurot is when we make a couple of lines and the immediate family passes in between. It's symbolic of the transition that they're now making in their lives after losing someone so important. So, DJ.
We're going to form two parallel lines, appropriately spaced out, of course. And for those of you who are watching, again, a very sincere thank you on behalf of Dave, Sydney, and their family. A reminder, if you would go to our website, which is rightfamily.com, WRIGHTFAMILY.com, you'll find Shiva information as well as times for the minions this coming week. Again, there's a sign-up list to spend some time individually be with the family. They very much would appreciate it. And also, if you would like to leave a special note on Michelle's page, a way she touched your heart, a story they may not know, or a story they do know that'll bring a smile to their face, please kindly do until we can all be together and actually hug again. Let us feel Michelle's hug from wherever we are now. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Go in peace.
And as you leave, don't go home. Right. Folks, those who wish to say things, you may, those who cannot say or should not say. Right up.
I don't know if that's it.
Wave.
I don't have any words. Sorry.
They know you're there.
Thank you.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Please keep this family in your hearts and in your prayers. And until we meet again, may you all be safe. God bless.